Right. Well, hello and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for another career and professional development session. And today our session is from student to leader, how to navigate your professional relationships. And I am joined today by Dr. Mindy Kushnorf and Christina McKay, and they'll be sharing a little bit about their experience and how you are able to navigate your professional relationships in the workplace. Again, I would like to say this session is recorded, so we will get the session out and shared with you in about 24 to 40 hours. But also, if you have any questions or any relations to different resources that we have in career professional development, I will definitely be able to assist you. So with that being said, I will pass it over to Christina. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Hank. Thanks for having us again here today. We've been so excited to present today and discuss with all of you that most important transition, right, from student to leader. And today, of course, I am joined today with Dr. Mindy Kushnarov. And I guess we'll kind of start with some little bit of introductions for both of us. I think that's probably a good starting point. Well, I'm Christina McKay, and I've been with WGU about 7 years in the capacity of starting with the legal team courses and then moving into helping with some of the leadership courses as well. And now firmly planted in undergraduate and graduate capstone courses. And I am based in sunny, hot Phoenix, Arizona, where I just checked the temperature. We are 105 right now. All right, Mindy, take it away.
Okay. Hi, everyone. We're so glad you're here. I'm Dr. Mindy Kushnaroff, and I am currently in Charleston, South Carolina, where it's not quite as hot. It's 93, but it's very humid. We don't have a dry heat. I've been at WGU going on 14 years. I spent I think 8 years on the undergraduate accounting team, and then I moved over to our undergraduate capstone and uh, simulation courses. And Christine and I have been teammates since that time. So uh, we like to share our knowledge. So that's why we're here to answer your questions. So don't be shy about asking questions. Okay.
Yes, thanks, Mindy. And I did have some starter questions, and just in case your wheels are spinning right now in terms of any type of questions you may have about leadership and also going into leadership type roles or experience in that respect. And I guess, Mindy, we probably should just touch base on background in leadership. I know for myself, I have a legal background. I came from law. That's what I call my past life. And I practice law in mostly trust and estate work, a few other areas too, just private type practice with a friend of mine many moons ago back in Maryland. And but then transitioned into academia fully. It was just a great timing of everything and was able to explore a lot of different leadership positions in that capacity. Not to mention leadership in a law office too as well, because you still have to have those skill sets too when you're dealing with a staff, no matter how small or how large you're dealing with. So that's kind of like in a nutshell, just my background. Mindy, tell them a little bit about that. And I just pulled up the questions for us to start after that.
Well, I'm a CPA, so my career started out. I was an accounting major undergraduate. Um, I don't want to date myself, but when I got my CPA license, you only had to have an undergraduate degree in accounting. So fortunately, I passed. That's when we used Blue Books. So I'm really dating myself there, but we used Blue Books, and I was fortunate enough to be able to pass all 4 parts at once. And I started in the corporate world as a junior accountant. and kind of moved up the ranks. Did some auditing, did some general ledger accounting, did some manufacturing accounting. My last position in the corporate world, I was the controller of the H.J. Heinz company. And of course, that's the catch up, but we also owned Charlie the Tuna and Morris the Cat. And I was really, that was a challenge. I learned so much because their program, before you could get to the executive level, you had to be a manager, like of payroll, a manager of general ledger accounting, manufacturing accounting. So I got to touch all areas of accounting, and then I was lucky enough to be promoted. However, I had always wanted to teach. And so some of you from Indiana will recognize what I'm about to say. I adjuncted at Ivy Tech Community College, which is a great community college system in Indiana. And a position became available for a program chair in the accounting program, and I applied for it. They said they'll teach me everything I need to know, and they did. And I found my passion, and the passion being working with students and being able to use my accounting degree to help other people. So, Christina, should we move to some questions?
Yeah, definitely. So it looks like we don't have any questions just yet through the chat. So start thinking of some questions, but hopefully you can see the screen. Just kind of put some just introductory type questions. And my favorite right now is that top one. You could raise your hand or drop an emoji if you would feel ready to lead a team tomorrow. How confident are you? And you can use the emoji that expresses how confident you are.
Seisha's got Seisha. I love her name. I love
She's
to
got a
say it.
thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs
How
up.
about anybody else?
Depends.
It
Okay, Christian, we'll
depends.
take it.
Okay.
Any others? The fact that there's not many coming in, I have a feeling might be on and that's okay. That's why you're here.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Somewhat. All right, Christian. And
Well,
sometimes it may feel on depending on the day, right?
you can manage maybe one or two. I understand that. Sometimes I can
Sometimes your
only
hands can
manage
be
myself.
right. Not a team yet, yes. Sometimes you have your hands full enough with one or two, depending on the
Yes.
personalities.
When I was at Heinz, they didn't all report directly to me, but I had 450 people that reported to me, and thank goodness for the managers that they did report to. So I didn't have to deal with 450 people, but
Oh, that's good. Yeah,
that
I
is
think
insane.
yeah, maybe I like Mick managing a project. That's a good point because skill sets that translate into management and leadership, you can develop in projects too as well. Oh, Basil
It,
has a good question. How many layers of reporting did the 450 employees consist of?
well, typically there were senior managers. So the senior managers, there was one over every accounting function, including finance. And so there was about 10 of them. And then they had managers, and there usually was at least 2 or 3 managers. And then because we're talking about 40 or 50 employees like AP clerks and accounts receivable people and general ledger people. So there was actually, and there were supervisors. So there was at any one time, there would be three layers of reporting for the 450 people. Sometimes there was more, sometimes there was less. It depended if we were hiring or if we found the right people.
Yeah, I think I'm on the other side on the management. I think the largest team I had was 75. And that the challenge that I found with this was so when I first moved out to Phoenix, it was to start a new office for a university. And because we were expanding to the west. And so I was the second manager to come out and start this office. And we had hired, I think, about 100 counselors at that time. And lucky me, I got 75 of them right off the bat to manage. And it was kind of interesting because also I was relocating to a brand new area too, because that's another thing. Sometimes when you're transitioning into a leadership role, there's all the other factors around too that, you're also managing to also, a new location. You might have relocated for a job. You might have, gone to a different company to do this. So it's kind of like a learning curve in that respect. And then you got these 75 people to also manage too and learn three different verticals, right? That was kind of my layers. They all had different, one was health, one was business, one was, I think it was human services. They all had their particular focus and such a wide variety of personalities too. But I didn't have any layers between me and them. So I was directly managing those 75 individuals at first until I got a layer of
Wow.
managers later. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. Yeah, but it definitely, like I said, was a learning curve too. I mean, Christian, yeah, did you have any leadership help or was it just me? At first, it was just me. Yes, because yeah, I did have later there was another manager that did come out, and then that's when we started to kind of, because we knew the office was going to grow. I mean, eventually the office, I think it had about 2,000 employees here in Phoenix. And so we knew it was going to grow and we were going to have to bring other leadership in. But yeah, it was just kind of, I just took the plunge and it was, but that's sometimes just getting your hands on experience. I feel sometimes is the best experience too, because I didn't have any help like that at the time. We really didn't have any like this available, like webinars like this. I think that's also, I think you all have such a great opportunity to have these type of sessions and information, Google, things like this that really help because yeah, it is trial by fire, when you're first kind of starting out in some respects, but applying, and not being afraid to receive feedback too. That was the other thing. So I was able to lean on other leadership from our main corporate was in Baltimore. So I was able to, of course, those connections, kind of reach out if I did need it. But actually in the office, it was just me.
Well, the one thing about leading a team is that doesn't what there's a difference between leading and managing. And you can lead a team of peers. Here at WGU, we are very team, at least our team is very team based. We make decisions as a team. We cover each other as a team. And we do have people that specialize in certain areas, but the team itself makes the decision. And when you lead a team, you may not have the title of manager, but leading a team has a lot of crucial steps in it. Of course, with any kind of leading or management, you have to be concerned about setting the right example and letting your staff know that, or even your team, that you're committed. And I've told Christina this several times. When I was at Heinz and we some of our clerical people had to come in on Saturdays, I would always make sure that I was there and I knew how to, let's say, enter accounts payable invoices. And so I would help them enter invoices. They probably didn't want me to because I was slow and I would ask questions. But from a management leadership perspective, it showed that I was just as invested in them and getting the job done as they were. And that's a quick, easy way to build respect. Your staff knows, hey, she didn't have to come in. She doesn't get paid for working on Saturday, but she's here. And so that's one thing that whatever role you're in, you can exhibit those kinds of skills to impress those above you when you're ready to step into a management role. Be the captain of the ship. That's correct, Basil.
Yes. No, I was just reading some of these great comments and questions.
Okay.
Christian had mentioned that what keeps happening to Christian is that, being offered management positions, encouraged to move in that directions, but having yet to find a company that you're comfortable managing in. And you believe in the mission, which is crucial. It really is. And I know he has leadership, she has a creative leadership qualities, hypersensitive to corporate corruption. Great points to past experiences. And I'm at a company now where I'm being trained for management. Oh, even better when we expand into more states. Excellent, excellent. Imposter syndrome. Yes, definitely, definitely. But that's excellent. You do have, I find that more companies nowadays are trying to invest in their employees by doing those types of training programs. Because I know that came after, well after my time in management. That they started implementing those type of programs, and I was able to assist actually with creating some of the modules and areas that give feedback on that would be helpful to other managers, because it's great. And I think that's a sign of a solid, good company, because they're investing into their employees to give that type of training to them. So I think that's already a good sign. Yeah.
The one most expensive expense that any company has is their overhead, and that's salary and benefits. And we've all either been involved in a layoff or know people who have been laid off, and that's why it's so important to make sure that you have leader and manager skills that you have exhibited, because if that time comes, you don't want to be, you want them to look at you and say, no, they're too important. They're a team leader. They step out and really do their work. But having said that, some companies, fortunately, I've never worked in any, but some companies, as you mentioned, Christian, there is corruption. And back in my early days, we had all kinds of accounting issues that corporate was in, not at Heinz, but at other big companies, where the audit managers were getting in cahoots with the outside auditors, and they were stealing billions of dollars, and people lost their retirements and things like that. So what I'm trying to say is ethics and morals are very, very important. And that's one thing Christina and I are very similar about, her being in the legal field and me being in the accounting field, is that we have very strong ethical and moral beliefs. So, okay, let's move on to the second question. What's the number one skill you think employers look for when hiring recent graduates into leadership tracks?
And I think that actually can go with And I was also, again, kind of some of the questions that were coming in too, because we might be able to kind of cross over also.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Communication.
for me, number one skill, I would say, right now, okay, the buzz is AI, right? Okay. That's always kind of the big one that comes. But piggybacking on the ethical, moral piece of it, I feel that more employers are tuning in to, yes, know AI, become educated in AI right now, but know the ethical implications of it too. Don't just blindly use it either. So it is an important skill, but I've seen and just been reading a lot more about employers that are tuning into that and just knowing the proper usage of it. So that's what I would think for that one.
Nina, I agree with AI too. I think AI is a valuable tool. I just think we all could do with a little more training as to the proper uses of AI and how it can make our jobs better. And it's a great tool. It's just when it's misused that, it's not so great. But let's
They're like
see.
Christians, innovation, adaptability.
Yeah,
I like that
definitely.
one. And you're needing to learn from above, across, and below. And actually, Seisha, your point about learning to, willing to learn above, across, and below. I like that because I saw a question earlier from Michaela, I think, about how, as you move up the ladder, if you go into management, into, like as high as a leadership position that Mindy held, that, how do you stay present when you're no longer on the front lines, right? And I like
Mhm.
that Seisha mentioned, willing to learn from above, across, and below, because it is making sure you are still in communication. Okay, that's another one I saw there, that you're still communicating with your front lines. You're keeping those doors open, because they are the ones working with the direct population. So I think that's I think that's the piece that is missing. And I'm not talking about communication just through like Teams channels, Slack channels. It's actual communication. That's what I think is most important in that respect. What do you think, Mindy? Yeah.
You know, Teams and email are great
Hmm.
tools, but they're exactly that. They're tools, one-on-one or one-to-many communication, like what we're doing tonight. You'll probably learn more by just listening to us talk than if you read something, you know, in a magazine or whatever, because the one-to-one communication, it goes both ways, and that was an excellent point, that it comes from above, across, and below. And Christian also said innovation and adaptability, and that is so true. Christina and I happen to be two people that we believe strongly in innovation, because let's face facts, sometimes school can get a little boring. Okay. And as instructors, it's incumbent upon us to be innovative and come up with different ways to present the material and to make our courses as easy, not easy to do, but as interesting as we can possibly do. And adaptability, and those of you that work here at WGU will agree with me. Um, if you work for WGU, you better be adaptable, because things change quickly, and they change quickly because our executive management wants to be the best at what we can be at all times. And so that requires the people like Christina and I, the instructors and the program mentors, to be able to adapt quickly. For instance, we had a system that we started using a year ago, and we found out after a year, our executive management found out it wasn't working as well as we wanted it to for our students. So, they put a hard stop on June 15th, and we better have it done. But being adaptable is a very, very important skill with being in leadership or management.
Right. And I think nowadays, there's a lot of talk of different generations, right? That also leaders have to, again, be flexible, adapt, and also innovate with, right? And I guess I come across that in my own experience. And I think even more so as I continue to grow older, it's you see more of that variance, the generational, right? And when you're a leader now slash manager of a team, you may be tasked with leading a team that is mostly Gen Z, right? You may have maybe one baby boomer in there. How do you get your team to work cohesively and innovate cohesively when they're coming from two different backgrounds, and in a sense. So I feel that that's something that I see as actually, I was looking at this other question about biggest challenge that young leaders may face right now. I think kind of sometimes that adaptability might be a challenge now, especially if it's a younger leader. I mean, it could be anyone from millennial on, and they have Gen X and baby boomers on their team. You're dealing with sometimes with different skill sets in that respect. But Mindy and I have had this conversation many times that, a manager slash, true leader, is only as strong as their employees, as their staff. And I feel it's always important as a leader to tune into the strengths and also the weaknesses of each employee that you have, because you can really build something beautiful from everyone's strength in their particular role. And that's what we've done on our team, right?
Yes.
In terms of our instructor team, we lean on one that's really great with editing, one that's really great with videos, whatever it may be. So, remember that too as well.
That is very true. And that's one of the ways I ended up on the capstone team, is they wanted somebody with a strong accounting background. And so the team actually asked me to come over, and then told the manager that they had asked me, so they really didn't have any choice in the matter. But that's okay. That's okay.
The rest is
And
history.
And we all in our team, we all have, like Christina said, we all have a skill set that is so imperative to our team for being successful. Because being on the capstone team, we're dealing with rising seniors and seniors who are about ready to graduate. And we want to make sure that you're ready, because you might be starting a new career. You might want to be starting a new career. You may be looking for another position within the same company. You may be ready to interview outside of your current company. So that's why it's imperative to learn the things that we have taught you through our management and leadership skills.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about this one's not on your list, on the list, but I'm going to ask it. How many of you who are here today came back to school to change careers? If you just want to put your hands up or put it in the chat.
Yeah. I did. Okay, Matthew. Thanks.
Aisha,
Yep, we got more. Yeah, two more that raised their hands.
Basil,
Great. Looking for career boost. Great, Basil. I did when I was a
Michaela.
student. Okay, Michaela. Great. Now I
You
work here. We get a lot of those.
Yes, we do. We get a lot. Well, I just wanted to throw this out there for all of you. I talk to a lot of students privately that want to change careers, and they may be, I don't know, art history majors or something like that, but they want to be accountants now. And they say they can't get an accounting job until they have experience. Well,
Right.
you can't get experience if you don't have a job, right? So what I often tell students, and Christina can expand on this, is look for volunteer work. Nonprofit agencies kill for people to work for them as a volunteer. For example, I live in Charleston, South Carolina. We have several plantations that are here. To help the plantations, I do their yearly audits, so they don't have to pay an outside auditor because I'm a CPA and I can save them that expense. And it's a good feeling for me because, I've helped them. I've helped churches. There's all kinds of different opportunities, but don't be afraid to volunteer, and you can do it as many hours as you want. But that is a huge resume builder. I know when I looked at resumes, if I saw somebody volunteered for, let's say, Habitat for Humanity, that was one interview question that I definitely asked, how did you get into that? But it's a good way to get experience. And actually, it's even better than working in the field, because with nonprofits, it's a different kind of accounting, and not everyone has that particular skill.
Because you're
Christina,
focusing on the
do you
skill
want to?
sets. Yeah, it's true though. And actually ties really nice with Michaela's other question about, how does an aspiring leader gain a leadership role without a leadership title? Because it is really the experience, and just from like the legal side, yeah, I mean, you're not just jumping into first chair right out of law school. You definitely have to get that experience, and you're kind of, in the trenches, with the research. And there were many roles that I did beforehand that would just be supporting, right? And getting those skill sets, practice with them. And someone earlier mentioned about projects, right? So also when, before I moved out here to get my first, leadership type role, in management, I remember before that, something that stuck out in mind when I was interviewing for that role was the fact that the senior VP had said that you were already leading on your small team here at the university. And that was a team of maybe 6. So even though it was a smaller team, I still was exhibiting those leadership qualities in terms of taking lead and organization of key projects, things like that. So it doesn't even have to be you holding the title, right? Because I was their peer, but I was exhibiting the qualities of a leader in what I was doing. And inadvertently, it was nice to hear that colleagues were saying, yeah, and Christina inspired me to, they went on their way to do something else. And so yeah, sometimes it's not about holding all these leadership titles and then, you end up in this other leadership title. It really is, yeah, just like this type of experience and being creative with that. That's what you have to, really kind of focus in.
I'm going to skip down a question.
Yeah, go for
Love
it.
this question.
Yeah.
How
Which
can I
one?
project confidence and authority when I don't have years of industry experience yet? And that one word answer to that is humility. Learn from your staff. There's not
Yes.
learn from your peers, just what Christina was talking about. You don't have to hold a title of manager or leader, and you don't have to have years of industry experience, but your leaders want to see that you're confident and that you have the authority to be able to lead people effectively. But to be able to do that, like Christina mentioned earlier, I always told people when they would send a note and tell me we did a good job. And I always say, well, praising my staff is the best compliment I can get, because I was smart enough to hire them and they're great enough that they can do the job well. But the one thing you don't want to do, especially if you don't have industry experience, is be overconfident and smug, because that will turn somebody off immediately. But if you show the willingness to learn and the willingness to accept their expertise, and I will say at WGU, one of the things that, and you can talk about your experience, Christina, is they do listen to the course instructors and the program mentors' feedback, because we are in the trenches. We talk to you guys every day. They don't. So we are able to be confident and tell our leaders, hey, this isn't working. And we really don't have to worry about any blowback. They appreciate the candidness and the honesty.
Right. Yeah. And I would say on my end, I think a lot of times when you think of a leader, you think that they are, polished, right? That they are, perfect. But honestly, I think when I came to terms that, yes, I will make mistakes, I will learn, and being open to that learning, it became not easier, but just I understood more, and I was able to, someone mentioned about vulnerability, Seisha, ability to ask questions. And that also enabled me to be able to, yeah, okay, looking back, why should I have done this instead? Because everyone's going to make mistakes. No one's perfect, and we all know some of the greatest leaders, they had their moments too, right? And but that's the best learning, that you can get and share now with others too, when you get, to a point too. And so I think that's really important to remember, because I think others, it makes me think of, Mindy, check your ego, at the door, right?
Yes.
Reminds me of that, because it's so important, so that you can be relatable, that people will be more open to share with you and talk with you, and just be with them again, like in the trenches. That's important.
It really is. The story, just a moment of levity, but the story, check your ego at the door. We're showing our age here, Christina, but that actually came from Lionel Richie, when all these music
Was
artists from
We Are the
every
World?
genre,
Yeah, We Are the World. Yeah.
We Are the World. And he, Lionel was the one who organized it. And he had on the outside of the door, check your egos at the door, because here were all these, Bob Dylan was there, and Bruce
Bruce
Springsteen,
Springsteen,
and Willie Nelson, and
Michael Jackson. Yes.
Michael Jackson. Yeah. So
Yeah.
all of these, and I love that line. But yeah, check your ego at the door.
That's what immediately I
You want
thought
to
of.
be egotistical? Don't do it in the workplace.
Right. But do remember that very much so.
And Christian, as far as humility, it'll take you a long way. It really will, if you're just humble.
Yeah, it will.
You
It
know,
will.
people change jobs most of the time, not because they don't like their job, but because they don't like their manager or leader. And the reason they don't really, and that's statistically true, 90% of job changes are due to bad management and bad leaders. And as I said earlier, salary and benefits and hiring and training are very expensive. So you want to hang on to your good people.
Yes.
And that's why humility is so important.
Yeah. And be willing to keep learning. That's the other thing. I think another difference between when Mindy and I were in, management leadership positions from the past, compared to now, there's so many amazing resources now online that you can learn, be it, was it Udemy, LinkedIn Learning. I mean, there's just so much out there. I mean, it could become kind of overwhelming, right? I know the Handshake, app, also has, I mean, take advantage of those, take the time. I mean, even if you just carve out an hour a week, just to kind of go, okay, I'm going to devote this to my own development, my own learning, because I just feel like, instead of scrolling on the phone, right, and looking at social media, take that time, because you're just going to thank yourself all the more for it. And I know even at, at our, where we are now, we're still learning, I mean, I recently took an AI certificate courses, and because it's just so important, and that's another way to really improve your leadership too as well.
And even though I'm no spring chicken, but I'm starting another MBA program in the fall because I love to work. Plus I love their football team. It's Clemson University. So
Yeah, I like Daniel's question. How do you deal with bad apples on your team? Any advice? You want to start with this one, or?
well, unfortunately, in every aspect of your life, you're always going to have a bad apple. And one bad apple will ruin the whole basket.
Yes.
That's a sad fact.
Yes.
But
Yes.
dealing with bad apples, your company should have policies on, we call them here at WGU, performance improvement plans. And your HR folks we have a handbook for you students, and we also have a faculty handbook that we have to follow, that we have to make sure that we are following. But the bad apples, sometimes, I know when I was in the corporate world, because nobody likes to fire anybody, but sometimes that's the only way you can deal with it. My answer to that is, if you have a bad apple, document, document, document. If you are, and this was told to me by an attorney, not Christina, but he was a former president of the National Labor Relations Board. Write it down, even if you have a sticky note, write it down, what happened, and put it in a file. Because the reality of today is that you have to have very strong documentation. So if there's a bad apple, make sure it's documented, make sure that you let your manager or HR know that there's some issues, and maybe they have some, our HR group, which they're fantastic. There is a process, and we all know what that process is. So
I was just reading
hey,
Daniel's
we
follow-up.
wanna,
Yes, he got HR involved. Yeah. Oh, and you were the team lead. Okay, excellent. Yes. I mean, lean on your human resources, any other type of, compliance, any ombudsman, type departments that you may have. Because yeah, and of course, legal, yeah, your, documentation is everything too as well. And just don't shy away from those conversations too, because they are, as a, well, manager first, yes, you will have to have those difficult conversations. They are going to happen. There's no way around it. But the sooner you have those discussions, I feel like, yeah, the bad apple that's starting to, form doesn't get all the way, just ugh. You want to make sure that, you deal with it early on, and seek out, people you trust, and of course, you can't share everything, but people, you can find examples, of, other people who have dealt with similar things that you trust and know. Because yeah, you just don't want it to go so far too. But that's something I think that, as a reality, when you go into management, you just have to know that that's going to be part of it. As much as we hope that we're going to have perfect teams, that's just, oh, it would be wonderful, but there's always something that comes up, of varying degrees, of course. So
I like Michelle's
I understand.
question. How do you balance being approachable and building genuine rapport with your team or colleagues while still maintaining clear
Oh,
authority
yeah.
and professional boundaries beyond just relying on your title or position?
Mm.
Well, I know what works for me, and that's being a nice person. When you're in the office, smile and say good morning. You know, ask people how their weekend was. Ask them if they have any plans for the weekend. You know, Bill, everybody needs to unload sometimes, and let them know that you're willing to listen and that you'll keep it confidential. And once you've done that, they will respect that, and they will talk to you about anything. But be approachable. We used to at Heinz, I would pick certain groups, and we would have um, luncheons where it was me and one of the groups and their management people, and um, it was basically a no trouble bubble. They could say anything what they wanted, and no one would get upset about that. But it was a great way to build that rapport up, because they knew they weren't going to get in trouble. And as a management person, it was important for us to hear what they said, to stop the bad apple from rotting before it even happens.
Right. Or as Seisha said, try to get rid of the worm first before
Yes.
throwing out the whole apple. Yes. And that's always me about those conversations, right? Yeah. So that's an excellent point. And I agree with Mindy's sentiments there, in terms of yeah, establishing, being approachable, but I think it goes back to respect, right? In terms of when you do obtain, when you have a new manager, before you start to learn about them, who they are, just setting those expectations up front. But again, yeah, being approachable, and they will respect you. Those boundaries are set there, that comes along with it. So that's what I have found too as well. I
Another
always
thing
felt,
I used to tell my staff was, please don't lie to me. If you make a mistake, you're not going to get in trouble, because we can fix anything.
right.
Just come and tell me that this
Mhm.
happened. We
Right.
can fix it.
Right.
Now, if it happens a second time, we'll talk a little bit more about it. And then the third time it happens, then maybe you say something like, when you do that, it causes extra work for
Mhm.
so and so.
Right.
And so if you approach them with respect, they will respond with respect.
Yeah. Right.
It's the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And that's really, as a manager, that's the best rule you can follow.
So again, Michelle's question, how do you manage adapting your leadership style to different individuals? For example, some will thrive with more guidance and check-ins, while others prefer autonomy without it coming across as favoritism or inconsistency to the rest of the team. Yeah, I mean, for me, I would say, a lot of it is, yes, learning about each of your staff employees, right? Asking questions, being inquisitive, um, because that's how you learn those things, right? And I think when others on a team see that you are utilizing strengths and and also highlighting strengths, it doesn't come across as favoritism. It's because, yes, this person is very strong in this and we can all learn from this individual. So I think a lot of it is how, as a manager, slash leader, that you presented. So I think that's important, to provide that, okay, this is a learning opportunity. And again, you're focusing on everyone's strengths.
And I think one thing that really bothers people, and I know it really bothers me, I don't like helicopter managers. And what I mean by that, you've heard of helicopter parents. It's the same thing where they hover over you and feel like they have to know that you're doing everything. And, a good manager is going to let the team do what they need to do and step back and just let the team know, hey, I'm here if you need me. And that's the way I was. I'm here if you need me. I'm here if you need to talk. I'm here if, you want them to feel comfortable enough, because one thing, especially in the corporate world, people have outside lives, and things happen in their lives, sickness, death, things like that. And it's important to show your empathy as well, so that everybody knows that you will be as empathetic to them as you were to the person that had the bad thing happen.
You are human as well. Yes.
Hey, did
Hey.
we have any questions?
Hey, Hank.
Hello. It was hearing a lot of great questions and a lot of great feedback from you guys. So I love it. We got about 5 minutes left in the session. So I just definitely want to make sure that we answer any questions, or if you have any last final thoughts, definitely want to hear those and be able to give everyone time to kind of share if there's anything else on the mind.
Yeah, no, thanks. And I just threw up this one slide, your homework. Just thought it'd be a good idea just to some takeaways, to take with you about just key things that you can, like I mentioned, about always be learning, developing, things that you can think about coming out of this session. And I just thought these three areas, if you choose to partake, these are areas, I've had students reach out. I know Mindy too have reached out to us for chats on our, particular profession to help. And I'll put our contact information up after this too as well. Write down the name of a mentor, professor you can reach out to for a leadership chat. Always happy to help in that respect. Maybe something currently in your work that you're working on. Practice delegation. How would you approach it? Why? Specific leadership gaps. So hopefully we've given you a lot of food for thought, this session, definitely.
And
And
I think our email addresses are here, and please feel free to reach out.
Please do.
One of the things we pride ourselves here at WGU is helping all students, whether you're we just happen to be in the School of Business, but if you're in another school, reach out to us. We're happy to help anybody that has a question or needs to talk about how to handle a situation. I have a lot of former students that reach out to me, and I help them we do mock interviews, and, you know, I do referrals and things like that for
Yeah,
them.
recommendations, cover
Yes.
letter. Yeah, resume review.
We have a fabulous group that Hank works for, but if you want to contact us, we'll help you too.
Yes. Oh, well, that's great. The more the merrier. As long as there's good questions and good information coming from WGU, I say, hey, take all the resources that you can. So I am going to actually make sure in the recording of the video, when I send that out, make sure that we include email addresses for both Mindy and Christina. So I'll share that with you. And then also I'll make sure that we'll share some of the questions from the slide deck as well. So if you have some thoughts or want to go back and kind of think about those afterwards, you can. And we'll have that available for you tomorrow. Also, if you have the ability and would like to fill out our survey link, I would appreciate if you could do so. We would love to keep bringing in great sessions like this, and especially when we're having our instructors give a little bit more insight outside of the classroom to topics that may benefit you in your career. So I'll drop that in the chat, and I'll also include it with the email tomorrow. But any last final words before we conclude?
No, just thank you so much for having us, and thank you for all being such an engaging group. These were excellent questions, and look forward to assisting in any way in the future with you all.
Absolutely. We're we're instructors because we're student obsessed, and that has no boundaries. And we're glad to help or answer questions, anything you need.
All right. Well,
And
thank you,
thank you all for
everyone.
being here and taking an hour to spend the time with us. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much. And everyone, you have a great evening or day for for those other ones. So appreciate it. Have a good one.
Take
Thank
care.
you.